Hi there, I'd like to give you a content warning before this video. The movie being discussed today has a lot of disturbing themes. In particular, there's a lot of discussion about violence against slaves in the Confederate South. Why would I read that? Why would you make me read this? That's a very serious issue to give to me and this voice. Anyway, there's also a lot of discussion of dead animals, which I would have thought you would have got from the title of the movie, but hey, what do I know? All right, there's your content warning. Enjoy the video, all right?
Dead Birds is a 2004 indie western horror period drama that, despite having some really cool creature designs and a lot of fun haunted house shenanigans, is virtually impossible to get anybody to watch because it's a 2004 indie western horror period drama with the title Dead Birds. Howdy cowpokes, today we're looking at Dead Birds, and let's get out ahead of this. For reasons that escape me, people find the title Dead Birds very funny. I am saying this based on a lot of experience, that a lot of people I've recommended this movie to have just laughed when I told them the title. It's always funny to people that the movie is called Dead Birds, and it is a bad title. The titular Dead Birds factor into the story very little. There's literally one scene where characters find some literal dead birds, and that is a portent of the evil they find themselves trapped within. That nature rejects this place so that birds fall from the sky dead. I suppose you could also argue that the creatures we see throughout the movie are meant to be bird-like, and that would lend some significance to the title, but they don't look like birds to me. Like a little bit. They kind of look like plucked chickens, I guess. Not a lot. And nobody refers to them as bird-like. That was just how pretentious indie movies were named at the time. Okay, you gave it a silly, frivolous, random name that you had to watch the movie to understand the significance of. That's just how it was back then. Nowadays, we're used to more simplistic, minimalist titles, especially for horror movies. If this were made today, it'd be called like The Plantation or The Manor or something like that. You know, something boring. So just get it out of your system now, your giggles and your guffaws. Let's give this movie a fair shake despite its very silly title. There's a lot of good stuff about it and a lot of not so good stuff about it, but it deserves to be seen way more than people have seen it. Dead Birds follows a group of Confederate deserters in the American Civil War who rob a bank and hide in an abandoned manor house, only to discover, of course, that it's haunted as the ever-loving hell. Just crammed to the gills with ghosts and demons and hobgoblins and shit. Stuffed full of them, corner to corner. I think there's meant to be a sort of distortion of what the audience sees versus what the characters see. I mean, we learn later that they're seeing things, but usually the way that they see things is that they're scarier than they usually are, not less scary. But sometimes the characters will see something that should be the scariest fucking thing they've ever seen in their life, and they react like, huh, that's weird. What? Did you notice that that's kind of weird? Several characters see monsters that look like this, and they're like, that's unusual. What a strange looking animal. Perhaps it's a pig or a dog of some sort. Are you kidding me? I consider myself more scientifically literate, skeptical, and materialist than your average Confederate soldier. And if I saw that, there would not be a doubt in my brain that I was looking at a demon or evil monster of some kind. Sure, back then you saw all sorts of fucked up animals, but they didn't have human faces with razor sharp teeth. That should alarm you when you see it. There's a scene where one of the characters sees this fucking thing and is like, there was a boy in my room. Is that the takeaway? The headline here for you is that there was a boy in your room. That's the most unusual element of this experience to you, that there was a boy around. Key information I need to convey right now. There's a boy. He was in my room. Anything else you'd like to add? Maybe about his spooked up monster face? I do not wish to get into spoilers, but as the movie goes on, we begin to see that the character's sense of reality is gradually eroding to the point that what they are seeing no longer corresponds with the real world. So I don't know if this was intentional, like maybe she only saw like a little boy, but the audience, because we know it's actually a spooky boy, so we saw a spooky face. Maybe that's the intention. I don't know. Perhaps likewise, the pig man dogs looked normal to those under the influence of the evil house, but maybe I'm just making excuses for the fact that this movie makes its protagonists seem like complete fucking dullards for sticking around well past the point that any reasonable person would have concluded, oh shit, there's like 1 million ghosts here. There's a million ghosts and demons trying to gobble up my soul's entire ass. I'm kind of dancing around the story here because the story's not important. Okay, so a group of Confederate army guys desert, and there's like a runaway slave with them, and they're led by the thoroughly uncharismatic William. They rob a bank and get away with a bunch of sacks of literal gold. There's William, who's the leader. He's boring, never seems to make a good decision, spends the entire movie ordering people around while each and every one of them plots against him behind his back. There's William's best pal, Todd, an escaped slave. You also have the contemptible Clyde, a former slave trader who spends most of the movie reminding you that he is deeply white supremacist. A fact I would have picked up from the fact that he was a slave trader. But also, he won't hesitate to kill white people for money either. He's just a bad guy all around. And your eyes do not deceive you, dear viewer. That's a young Michael Shannon. You also got Annabelle. She's the girl one. She's a nurse. She's also William's girlfriend, and also the most loyal of his crew, despite also literally being a cutthroat. That doesn't feel well thought out, you know? There's Sam, who's a guy. He got shot in the beginning. And there's Joseph, who's the last guy. He's the cop from Batman Begins, the guy that Batman goes, "Swear to me!" That he does that to him, that he's that guy. I know that the character's name is Detective Flass, but I don't expect my audience to know that. So they rob this bank, and in the scuffle, William shoots a kid, and he feels bad about it for a couple scenes. But then the movie drops that plot thread. They go to this old farm manor that William's friend told him about or something, but of course, it was once owned by an evil wizard who sacrificed his slaves in black magic rituals intended to bring his wife back from the dead, and it worked, but what he didn't know was that if you open up the doorway between this world and the spirit world, all of the ghosts and spirits pour through and try to fuck up things on this side because they're just mad about everything. So now the place is cursed to be full of jump scare monsters for all eternity. None of that matters. It's fine, don't worry about it. It's not that kind of movie. You know, it's a haunted house movie. There's spooky goblins running around, and the mythology isn't really well thought out or necessary at all. I'll give you an example of how poorly thought out the mythology of this movie is. It is implied that the evil wizard got his spells by studying the spiritual traditions of his slaves, which is a roundabout way of saying he learned voodoo, which I'm compelled to remind my audience is just a normal religion. They find his evil book of dark magics, and Joseph says, does this mean anything to you, Todd? And Todd says, actually, hold on a second. It needs to be said, I cannot take a character named Todd seriously. Todd is a very funny name. If your name is Todd, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The name Todd is not a serious name for a serious character unless it is preceded by Tony. So Todd, he looks at the spell book and he says, oh yeah, that one there? Yeah, that's a spell to resurrect the dead, all casual like of course I know what this is. It's a spell to resurrect the dead. Ask any slave and they've seen that one a million times. And I don't think this was the movie's intent, but writing it this way does kind of imply that the slaves brought it on themselves, that it was their own spooky power being used against them, their base spiritual tradition run amok. The movie is very critical of the institution of slavery, which, obviously, right? You would expect it to be. And it lingers on the cruelty of the slave masters that they inflicted on the slaves, how he literally disemboweled one of his slaves to do this ritual. It condemns the overt white supremacy of the Confederate South. If that's the angle, probably something you wouldn't want to put in your movie is a kind of suggestion that the culture of Africa is evil or able to contact evil spirits, and that if white people study that culture, the evil will spread. Maybe just throw in a line about how he perverted it or he wasn't doing it right. At once, the movie is saying that slavery is definitely bad, which fair enough, but also that the spooky continent of Africa was full of dark magic. So the shit white people made up to colonize Africa was true. And so that probably could use a second draft, is what I'm saying. I know I'm focusing on this a lot, but my ultimate point here isn't that there's just some unexamined racist subtext in the movie. I think I've established that. My point is that if they had thought about it just a little bit more, they would have probably realized that, and they didn't think of it because the story of this movie is paper thin. It does not matter. They wanted to get everybody into a house full of spooky goblins, and they did it. And as a haunted house movie, it's very good. You're going to get the ever-loving piss jump scared out of you in this one. Some of the effects have not aged well, but they jump out and scare you, so it doesn't matter if they look good. I remembered this movie being both artsy and fartsy. It is not. It is just a period piece. That's the only reason I thought that. This movie is some very silly fun that takes itself preposterously seriously. It's genuinely quite tense and able to spook the bejesus out of you with some very upsetting monster faces. I don't like to look at this. I don't like it. I have a deep revulsion to this. The movie puts all of its chips down on atmosphere. Forget the characters, forget the story, don't even glance in the direction of subtext. Just get spooked by a ghost in a corn maze. And when that works, it's great. It's scary in a very visceral, immediate way. When the atmosphere doesn't quite work, the whole illusion just shatters and you can't help but laugh. It is a purely vibe-based movie. If you're the type of person that has difficulty getting invested in a horror movie, you will not enjoy this one. But if you're able to just kind of force yourself to let it go, and just take the movie as it is, it's great. Well worth your time. You will be terribly startled every few minutes for about 2 hours, if that's your thing. You might shit your pants, but beyond that, it's pretty flawed. Despite making you shit your pants, it is flawed. A qualified recommendation if ever there was one. A fantastic movie to not think about very much. And with all that being said, the movie should be titled Evil Deadwood. What do you think, Bobby? What did you think of Dead Birds? Well, howdy there, Mildo. It's me, Prairie Duke, the rootin'est, tootin'est star of the channel this side of the Mississippi. I'm here to inaugurate Western Month. We're gonna be looking at 4 Western-themed horror movies. Why do you keep starting themed months on the second week of the month, Bobby? I don't know who Bobby is, partner, but it sounds like he has a real cowboy fantasy he wants to live out, and maybe you don't gotta ruin it for him like you ruin everything. I am a little uncomfortable with this because cowboys are a way of mythologizing the American frontier to create a white hero narrative that paints over the genocidal. And now, see right there, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a prime example of you ruining this with your liberal SJW bullshit. Do you feel like you're solving a problem by lecturing folk about how problematic media they like is instead of applying real-life pressure to the systems of power which maintain the white supremacy you claim to be so concerned with? Isn't that just a way of distancing yourself from your own complacency while granting yourself an unearned position of moral superiority? A kind of play acting at activism that gives the appearance of challenging oppression without risking anything? Did you ever consider, Mildo, that perhaps your reflexive need to label every piece of media on the planet problematic has more to do with a deep-seated insecurity about how you are perceived rather than a genuine commitment to social justice? Okay, Jesus. I get it, I'm sorry. Well, say it like a cowboy then. I reckon I was being yellow-bellied, and I'm sorrier than a pig in a poke. Well, good, you get yourself a little costume for next time, we'll call it even, how about that? As for the rest of you, why don't you rustle up a like on this video? And you best be getting to subscribe, hear me now? Go on, get! I'm Prairie Duke, I'm a cowboy now, for a whole month. Now do you find this voice deeply annoying? Because I'm not going to stop doing it for an entire month.